council's control as to how quickly that information can come to us. We would like to note, we would like it noted that we appreciate all the help and support provided by the council officers during the audit. And that was everything I wanted to highlight, but I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much indeed for your update. But before I go to the committee, if I may, I'll go to the officers first and ask, do you have anything that you wish to respond to in respect of that statement?
No, it's a really helpful run through. So thank you, Aphrodite. That was really helpful to bring us up to date where we are. There's a kind of more pragmatic, practical point I think it's worth just raising around timing. And I know, as you say, Aphrodite, this is a live situation where if we get the information back that we need, then we can resolve and finalise the audit. I'm conscious that we've got a meeting penciled in for the 20th of April. That was the plan, 20th of April. Now we still could hit that, subject to what comes back. If we don't get information back, we're going to have to start looking at a slightly later meeting. And hopefully, Aphrodite, you've got no concerns with that. I think we're looking, because we've got local elections this year, we're pragmatically looking probably to the June's meeting, because we've got a June's meeting anyway for the Audit Committee. So just want to put that, have that discussion around, if we don't hit that 20th of April deadline because of external information that we haven't got back yet, we'll be looking to bring a report formally back in June. And some of the issues you raised, Aphrodite, around the errors and bits and pieces and why we've not decided to amend for those. The good thing is it's totally transparent. Our accounts with this report is what's published, so people can see exactly what the position is, but we'll provide more details around those issues when we bring back the formal report about this. We'll do a cover report, an officer cover report would explain those issues in much more detail. So very much, it's a quick run through this morning. That was all I was going to raise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate, and now we turn to yourselves on the committee. We'll appreciate that we've had little or no time to even look at this, and we need time to absorb these kind of things, for it's in depth. But do you have any questions you would like to put to the external auditors at this moment? Zoe.
Thank you. No, not necessarily a question, but I think, Maurice, you are right. We do need time to sort of absorb the report. With what Richard said about the idea that it might slip over and go into next elections, what I would like to suggest is that for this committee to be able to absorb this, and any list of questions that we might have be put perhaps in a list, Richard, to come to you, that if it does go over from April through to June, that those questions could be considered by the new committee.
Chairman, I would endorse what Councillor Fairley's saying, really. I think, probably there will be issues that will need to be considered post-election by the newly formed committee, and therefore it's important that we capture what this committee wishes to have looked at in more depth or raised.
Please do go ahead.
Sorry, Aphrodite, are you happy to take that? Because it's that related party transaction, isn't it? Which I think we discussed at the last week, December. Are you happy to respond to that? The related party?
Apologies, I didn't hear the question. I think the microphone might have not been on.
Yes, thank you. If I may, Chairman. It's on page 24, related parties, undisclosed directorship, where it talks about management should implement a process where independent check on Company House. Just like to have some more context on that, Aphrodite, if that's okay.
Yeah, this is quite a contentious matter. It's one that we look at what we consider to be senior management at the council, and we compare the information that is declared to the council to that information that is uploaded onto Companies House, and where we have discrepancies we would bring that to your attention. However, I believe that management have some additional information for us that may take these two control issues away. So if I can come back on that one at the next committee with an update, because I don't want to give you the wrong information at this point. But from my understanding, there is additional information that would make those two issues go away. Does that help?
Yeah, just from my point of view, and picking up what Aphrodite said there, we're satisfied that there is no undisclosed issues there at all. But so we've got to agree that, haven't we? And I think, but so as Aphrodite says, that issue, once we've resolved it, that should be removed from this report, subject to Aphrodite being happy with that. But as far as we're concerned, there is no undisclosed related parties.
It's just that I don't consider as a risk to the authority whether particular members disclosed or not, whether it's got directorship or not. You know, that becomes the subject of DPI or any other implication which is governed by the code of conduct. So I'm quite surprised. Like, I've not had a chance to have a look at the report at all. So it's just something that I've picked up just by glazing through. On page 22, it talks about the new code of audit practice. That is something that obviously something new that's been introduced, and I'd just like to maybe going forward, we talked about training for audit committee members, and that with the new influx of members coming in, that will be something that I'm sure that's already been picked up by the Democratic Services team, but I'd very much like to see that as subject of training, tailored training to members of the committee. And I think Karen is nodding, and I think I've got the answer I wanted there.
Thank you. This is one of the very things I was going to pick up later on in the agenda, but you have so admirably done it for me. Karen, do you wish to respond to that?
Thank you, Chair. We don't have a firm date yet, Chair, but we have devised a training programme that will be delivered fairly soon after the new members have been elected for this committee. So hopefully that provides you with the reassurance.
Well, thank you.
Sorry, I just want to pick up Councillor Fairley's point, and I think, you know, from if there's any questions, I appreciate I've only had this morning. If there's any questions, read through it. Any questions, yeah, let me know. I'm sure Aphrodite, we can share those with you on a kind of a block basis, or if they, as they come in, let me know. We can make sure we get answers back to you anyway. So yeah, thank you.
But if we are sending any questions in, that we copy to committee members here, so we know what our colleagues are asking. Please, thank you.
So if any questions do go to you, will they be circulated to the rest of the committee for perusal?
Absolutely fine. We'll do. Yep.
Hello.
So yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to be clear, the outstanding matters are listed on page 30. Are there any? Is there anything on there that causes potential delay into issuing the final the report being finalised? Can any of them be carried forward and still have the finalised report for April?
Please.
I think there is a chance we can come back in April, but Aphrodite said it is subject to external bodies and parties providing information we require. We can chase up, we can make phone calls and bits and pieces. If I'm being really honest with the committee, I don't think we're going to come back. I'm being pessimistic. I'm an accountant. I could be pessimistic, can't I? And I think if I'm being pessimistic about it, I think that we're going to struggle to get that back to you at the end of April. So I'm more kind of looking at June But Aphrodite, if you tell me I'm wrong and we're happy, but we are in the hands of other parties here, aren't we? That's the trouble. And I think I just want to make sure that expectation is, I think that's going to be really tight for April.
Indeed, we are entirely reliant on the valuers for the gross internal areas, and we are entirely reliant on the experts for the infrastructure assets because they're such specialised assets. We don't have the skills internally to make that judgment.
You wish to come back?
Yeah, please, Chairman. I think if from being pragmatic, I think it would be great to draw a line and close the financial statement, for the year ending 2021. It is overdue as it is. I think we'd like to see a report done up and just highlight these areas that are still outstanding. I think we should do all we can to draw the line and close that, and then carry forward the work. To leave it in limbo, I don't think it's very good practice, Chairman.
Richard, you wish to respond to that?
I think I totally understand and get that, because I said the committee's been frustrated, equally as we've all been frustrated. We've not drawn this to a close. Unfortunately, I think it's difficult to do that. I think I'll be saying, Aphrodite, it puts you in a difficult position, because I'm not sure if there is a pragmatic approach we can take, because we are now looking at 21-22 accounts, and we're going to have, you'll be picking up the same issues in the 21-22. So the question is, I don't want to put you on the spot, but the question is there a pragmatic approach we could take that would enable you to finish off the accounts, but leave that as a kind of an outstanding issue that we can take forward? I think I know what your answer is going to be, but hopefully you don't mind me asking that question, is can we do something with the 21-22 accounts and pick it up then?
Yeah, unfortunately, the answer is no, and that is because both the infrastructure assets and the property, plant and equipment are very material balances. They're in the sort of 50 millions, so they're not small balances that we could just sort of carry forward and deal with in a future year. So unfortunately, we can't. But I appreciate you want closure on this. So I don't know if it gives any comfort to the committee, but those are the two only major areas that are left. Everything else we have concluded on, and our report won't change significantly when it is finalised, other to hopefully give a conclusion on those two areas.
Thank you. Yeah, just going back to Carlo very quickly, picking up on page 24 about the related parties undisclosed directorship. Obviously, we haven't had opportunity to read the report, and that has been a contentious issue. If that, as you say, Richard, is sort of it's still outstanding, why is it within that report there? And actually, will it be removed from the report based on what Aphrodite is saying, with there's only 2 changes there to make? Will that actually come out once that's solved?
Yes, based on my understanding, it will come out based on the discussion we had in December. If Aphrodite, you're happy with what we, our discussion we'll have is why it's going to come out, because there isn't undisclosed directorships. Yes, it should be removed completely. It's not my report, so Aphrodite might have a different view. But if we agree it's not an issue, then yeah, my view is it will come out. Sorry, Aphrodite. Yeah.
Yeah, apologies. When I said that those 2 areas are the main outstanding ones, that I meant more in terms of work that we have to complete. With those 2 issues, I should have clarified that we are hoping that we'll be able to take those out. Unfortunately, we had a change of manager in the last couple of months because the previous audit manager has left BDO, and in that process of handover, this information just didn't get transferred, and I do apologise that this causes frustration, but that's really the reason why this is still in here, even though Richard did discuss this with the previous audit manager. So that's why I'm hopeful that we'll be able to take that out at the next report.
Chairman, yeah, changing the subject on page 15, I'm not sure whether there should have been some colours by significant risk, significant management judgment and use of expert. Are they supposed to be colour coded, those 3 dots there, or squares, or because it just shows as grey.
Can I take this question? Yes, they are the equivalent of a tick to say that this area is a significant risk and it does involve significant management judgment and the use of experts. The ungreyed area, the white areas, are not applicable.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any more questions you would like to put to the external auditors at this moment? Well, I've remained rather quiet. For what I can see here, that this has been placed before us 10 minutes before the meeting started. And within that time span, we've spent a considerable time asking questions on it from a 10-minute brief. This is something that needs to be taken away and absorbed and to be brought back with the answers it needs. I'm not altogether sure that, to me, that to move it on to the next committee again, in my mind, is that right? I'm not 100% sure. I'm not sure what my colleagues think, but I think a new session, a new committee, and a new start, rather than have something like this hanging behind us. So I personally, at this moment, you understand I'm only temporary here, not permanent, I would be seeking reassurance that this can be brought to fruition so that we could see it as soon as possible. Is that possible?
Yeah, yes, of course. And I do appreciate you've only had 10 minutes to review this, and it is far from ideal. The reason for that was so that we could give you as up-to-date information as possible. However, I do realise it's not good, because it doesn't give you that opportunity, as you say, to absorb and identify any questions that you need to raise. But as Richard has said, more than happy to have questions sent back to us, and then we can respond to those questions either via email, or that can come back to the following committee, and then there's that trail of information from this committee to the next committee, so the next committee can make sure that any questions have been appropriately addressed.
So, Richard, having agreed that this is not an ideal situation for us to be in at the moment, it looks like the workload of this is going to land firmly on your desk. Could you give us some kind of direction on what will happen next if questions start to come in, how they will be answered maybe, and how do we get the strong resolve we're trying to reach at this moment?
I think in terms of the 2021 position, as Aphrodite said, there's only a couple of bits outstanding, and hopefully it's relatively straightforward. And on a really, really positive position, this is a really good report. This is a really good outcome on where the council stands. And we look forward to that much more detailed value for money use resources assessment as well upcoming, which hopefully will be equally as positive. I think the thing is, and we all agree, don't we? We've had the conversation, Aphrodite. I think one of the things that we is the delay has a delay. It's got a knock-on impact, isn't it? So the 21-22 accounts and bits and pieces. And I think as officers, we program working in various spots during the year. We have short windows of doing some work before the budget setting process and bits and pieces. So we're all struggling. Actually, we move a job we would have done in one part of the year to another part of the year, which means that we're doing two major elements of the council's financial sort of planning at the same time. It's really difficult, appreciate BDO's position as in limited capacity. We've only got limited capacity. We'll make sure it's done as always, and we'll inform you if there's any knock-on impact, but we'll try to respond accordingly. And as I said, we're looking at, I think, Aphrodite, we'll be looking across, I think your work, don't put you on the spot again, but I think your work at the moment for 21-22, you're looking to do that about August, September time. So forgive me if I've got that completely wrong, but that's your intention, to start that work on those accounts then, isn't it?
That is the intention, on the basis, that we can conclude these accounts hopefully soon.
no other questions,
Can I ask a question?
Stella?
Is there anything that this committee collectively can do to make things easier, do you think? In terms of getting some of this reported back more quickly? Does my question make sense? Sorry, Richard. Thank you.
It does, and I really appreciate that. But I think it's one of those things where we're tantalisingly so close to finishing off. And I think, as Aphrodite said, once we'll have a get together again. We'll just tie some loose ends up about the related parties, get those 2 bits of information back.
There is uncertainty, isn't there? Some of these things need to be looked at and fed back as swiftly as possible, but there's also the uncertainty around the formation of the future structure of this committee, etc. So that's another concern, that things could be lost in the process, if I'm frank about it, you know. Trying to be sort of as open-minded as I possibly can, not wishing to sound in any way negative or challenging, but I just wondered if there was anything between now and the next sort of 3-4 weeks that could be done that we could assist in, not in any particular expertise area, stress, certainly from my own perspective, but in any other way, you know, to reconsider something quicker. Would that be quicker model if we met again, or is it quicker if we just work on it individually and raise concerns?
I think it's a really, really good practical point in there. I think with the fact is, if we don't, I mean, if we can bring it back earlier, and we will, it's a live process. This might all be finalised next Friday. I say have a slight smile on my face because I'm being pessimistic again. I don't think it will be, but I think what might be really handy, based on what you've just said there, is it about the fact is it could be a whole new committee, couldn't it, in June? Is there a way that we can, you know, a briefing, we have a conversation, we get together, because you've lived it, haven't you, to this point, and then a new crowd, we're going to go, well, hang on, this is all new to us. So actually, is there something really practical there that we can have a get together? You know, a get together and have that discussion where we've come from before the formal meeting, which we have to sign off the accounts. That's a great idea, and I think we'll have a look at that. We'll take that away and see if we can do something, so you can almost have a relationship with the new committee if you're not still sitting here. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it almost sounds like to put together a handover, really, to the new people who will be sitting here, whoever they may be, because I mean it's not been straightforward, is it? It's been quite twists and turns, and so I think that's an excellent suggestion, and I think we should spend some time to do that. You know, just to this is where we are, that's what's happened, and you know, going forward. One more point, Chairman. It just occurred to me that my daughter-in-law has only just started working for BDO. She works in HR. I don't know whether I think I'd like her recorded just for transparency purposes. She's got a senior role in HR.
Aphrodite?
I think.
Can I add? Yes, we have, as you would expect, got quite strict independence rules surrounding any possible conflict, and we have looked at your daughter-in-law's position and whether there's any impact on our audit, and due to her position and as you say in HR, has nothing to do with this audit, is not part of our not part of our team, or in fact our local office, so there is no perceived or actual risk to our independence. So that's probably worth noting.
Chairman, thank you. That's exactly what I thought, but nevertheless, I thought I'd like to put it there. Thank you, Aphrodite.
Considering that we've not actually read this, we've put an awful lot of input into it already, so it's obvious that we need to put more. So I think at this moment in time that we should consider moving on to the rest of the agenda and to put our questions into Richard and to wait the result of that, and for you to maybe bring up a programme that we can put this all together and get the answers that we've been seeking. Do you agree with that? Everyone agree with me? Yes, Carlo?
And then a handover, maybe.
Oh, yes, and the handover, of course. So if I may, moving on to item 6. Oh, and thank you very much indeed. I completely forgot that you were there. I do apologize. An error, trust me. Of course, you're welcome to join us for the rest of the meeting, but should you wish now to sign off, okay, and go about your business in your own way, fine. But thank you again for coming to us and answering the questions you have. Okay.
Thank you as well. And if I may, I will sign off, and I will see you again in the future.
Okay.
Thank
Bye for now. Okay, so moving on then to the report of the internal audit manager, pages 9 to 30 of your agenda. And I believe, Craig, that's with yourselves.
Thank you, Chairman. So my report is in 2 sections. So we've got the progress report in terms of what the work we've done for the 2022-23 plan. And then we've got the new internal audit plan for 23-24 within there. So I'll go through the first part, which is the progress, and just give you some highlights in terms of what we've done. So since January, we've completed 4 audits, and we haven't reported any significant issues that we've identified in that period. So there's no major issues to report on those audits. There are 4 audits that we plan to defer to the new plan, 2 of which are around resourcing within the department themselves. So they're not set up to be able to provide the resource in order to be audited at that time, which kind of helps us as well, because we're struggling a little bit because my time has been pulled off on other corporate issues. So we plan to defer it, reassess it in 23-24, and determine whether or not it's still a priority at that point, which we do anyway. Within our plan, we're always risk assessing. Is it still relevant? Is the risk still there from when we identified it earlier on in the year? So we're always doing that anyway. So we've also completed 2 more since I wrote this report. So we're negotiating the final assurance. So with every audit, as Aphrodite was saying, you write your report, you send it to the managers, and they might have more information that you didn't get during that audit. So you negotiate and determine whether or not what they've provided is relevant, or does it mitigate the risk? And if it does, we may remove some issues out of the report. So we're just in that phase of determining what the overall assurance will be on those audits. That's really the progress since January. Resourcing, we always talk about resourcing at this committee. So we are currently out for advertisement for a new apprentice, which has gone internally because it's a level 3 MVQ. It's one above the starting point of what our normal apprentices would do. So we offer it internally. That will end in the next few days, and we're hoping that someone internal might be interested. If not, then we'll go external again and see what we can get. But that's where we're at, and that will help with the admin burden that we have within our team. There's a lot of admin with our work, and the apprentices help in terms of allowing my team to get on and do the audit work and not be sort of tied down by all the processes that take time, and they're quite onerous, and you need that admin help to get through it. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that will give us that extra resource within the next few weeks. And then the last part of the first part of the report is previous outstanding issues, which is why we have Damien here today to give us an update on depot operations. He previously gave us an update, maybe the last committee, the committee before that, so he's come back to give us the progress update on where he's at. We've had some information already, which we're quite happy that some of these areas are now complete and we can remove them from what's outstanding. But as we've talked about before, they're installing a new IT system, which is going to fundamentally change how they work. So that's going to be an ongoing program, really. So Damien's here to give us a bit of an update as to where they're at with that and how they're getting on with it. So if I pass you over to Damien can talk you through what's going on.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, so last time I came, we mentioned about the fact that we're looking at a piece of software called OneServe, which will fundamentally improve the way in which we collect data, the way we manage our data, and the way we manage our operatives as they're sent out to carry out repairs within the housing stock, as well as contractors that we use to carry out those repairs as well. So as you can imagine, that's a huge piece of work. An awful lot of data mapping has gone on in the background to actually understand how all of those functions sit with each other, how they interact with each other, and how we then look to, if you like, create that front page that collects the data from our operatives. There were 5 primary areas last time. So there was issues around stock control, around contract variation, missing tenancy information, a lack of clear record keeping, and there was some discrepancies between invoices and some of the issues that were collected on OneServe. So in relation to all of those items, they are all subject to the development of OneServe, and that will happen almost in an iterative way in some situations as we step through it step by step to ensure that we're addressing it properly. So as far as stock control goes, at the moment, we're well on the way to OneServe into introducing that, but we're collecting that data and managing it through spreadsheets at the moment. So they are password protected spreadsheets, limited access to, and that's been combined with the work that we did to secure the stores, which also has a limited access. So there's a very small number of people that can actually get to the stock. And as part of that process, of course, we're actually also looking at the stock that we hold. So why are we holding this stock? If we don't need to hold it, are there better ways in which we could do it? So electronically, can we buy it through, I'll use B&Q just as an example, it's not necessarily them, but can we just buy it through them so we don't hold the stock at all, we get it as we need it. So we're exploring all those things. So I'm comfortable that we are now carrying out regular stock control, we're doing regular stock checks, and moving into the future, that will all become part of the OneServe system. So it sits behind everything that we do. Contract variations, again, that's a little further down the line coming into the OneServe, but at the moment, officers keep an eye on that. They make sure that we're checking that where we do give variations. That generally happens if we say there's a leak, go repair the leak. They get there and they say, well, actually, the leak is caused by, and so forth. There's more work to do because the leak is greater than you thought. And so that's what leads to variation. So it's how we manage those variations. And moving forward, some of those things will be addressed through various apps that we'll be looking to use. So the operatives go out, they'll have an app, they'll see what the work is, they'll get there. If there's more work required, that'll all have to be entered. So you're collecting that data as you go along to ensure that when you finally get to that opportunity where there's a variation, you absolutely understand why that variation has got there in order to be able to resolve the problem. And I'm conscious that there's a lot of work still to happen and we're still moving forward before we get there, but it is really positive. It's one of those things where so much work happens in the background and then all of a sudden there's a little rush of things happening. And that's a prime example with missing tenancy information. There's been a huge amount of work done in the background to look at Northgate, which is a system we currently use, and OneServe, and how we share that data between them. And that's really positive because we're expecting that to be resolved around mid-April time. So that information will suddenly flood in, and we're going to have an awful lot more information available as we move. The lack of clear record keeping, I've mentioned the app. I think a lot of those things will be addressed with the app as they come through. We're expecting that from OneServe in April at some point, with hopefully going live around them in May. So again, big piece of work happening in the background, and there'll suddenly be a little rush where it becomes active. And we'll be using that ourselves as well as the contractor. The contractor has accesses to certain elements of the system so that we can track them and they can see what's happening with us as well. And we can collect that data. And they will be forced to use the app. And I mean that in the nicest possible way, of course, but if it's not on there, it never happened. We're going to kind of go with that approach. The app will collect the data will drive what we've done and what we expect to be paid for that data. And then we had some discrepancies between OneServe and invoices. And again, it comes all the way back to that data that we're collecting through the app, through the operatives and the work that they do. And the app will collect real-time data and how long it took you to do the job, what materials you used, where you were, but also the app will allow us to have tenant satisfaction surveys on there, so you can complete the circle, if you like, of doing the work and then ask the tenant to respond, which will feed into other things coming later on in the year. So that's basically where we are. I'm really positive that we are moving forward. I'm really positive that we're doing the things we said we would do. The audit was actually larger because there's quite a lot of other smaller things within that audit report which weren't relevant to come to this committee. But of those, again, a huge majority of those have been done as well. So I sit here being confident that we will meet those things. I'll caveat that by saying OneServe will never be finished, because the whole point of this is to constantly drive improvement. So there will always be elements that we're working on, new modules that we'll be looking to develop, new modules that we want to link to other bits of software that will improve the way in which we deliver our services to our customers, to our clients, but also in the way in which we collect data to report to yourselves and audit, to ensure that we're doing that in a factual, accurate way.
This is probably a good time for any questions for that first part of the report. I'm glad Damien was here to give that update because he knows more about that than I do. So yeah, any questions at the moment?
Have you actually finished your report per se?
So that first element, yeah, about my progress report, that's finished. I thought if we take questions on that and then I can move on to the new plan, if that's okay.
So, as you know, that my pet thing is this. It's both reputational and risk. But I'd like to answer the first question, if I may. There has obviously been significant improvements in this. And I always think this is a wee bit like an elastic band. It just goes round and round and round. You can't improve it. You just got to keep on adding to it for the improvement. But can you assure us that improvements have been made and that, as you say, will continue to do so?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, absolutely. We will continue to improve. One of the things that will drive our improvements is the fact that there are changes happening, regulatory changes to the housing stock anyway. And there's a regulator of social housing out there. From April 2024, we'll become a regulated service in housing. So this feeds beautifully into the work that we will also be doing to achieve that regulatory status. So absolutely. We will never be finished improving. The whole point is that you're using software, you're using technology to improve the way in which you collect data, which in turn improves your management information that drives improvement about how you deliver your services. But I sit here absolutely to assure you that we are improving and we will continue to improve.
I take questions. Carlo, we'll go the other way today, shall we? Carlo, then Zoe.
Thanks so much, Chairman. Thank you, Craig and Damien, for the introduction of the first part of that and the update on the operational things. Just on where he talked about the 4 audits have been completed, but there's still 2 of them have been negotiated. Just like a bit more information, which ones have not yet been finalised, and yeah, I've got some more questions. If you take that one first, yeah.
So the 2 that we were still waiting on is housing allocations, and the other was housing rents. Rents, yes. So we're not anticipating anything major to come out of that. And it's mainly down to me, really. My team are getting through the audits as they can, and I'm just trying to get that last bit over the line. Is we're a small team, so we try and do it as much as we can. So yeah, so those are the 2 audits.
Chairman, if I may, I thought that might have been the case. Just wanted to contemplate on that. The other thing is obviously Career Track. It's a tool that's been used by far. Are you dealing with them to trying to pin down an apprentice, or is there any update from the service there?
Yeah, so Career Tracker, they've been very helpful, and I'm a big advocate of having apprentices and getting them to, because audit is probably, if you want to learn about the organisation, how it works, audit, we know we're involved in every aspect of what we do, so it's a good learning place for anyone new coming into the organisation. So So career track have been great. I think it's the first time where we've had a level 3 apprentice, and so we're looking at people that have been here for a little while already, that can then add to the team if we can get someone. It's not appealing to everyone, but so yeah, in-house we're using them. We did try it. I did look at expanding it across the different councils and whatever else to get but I don't think we're there yet with every area. So we've gone back to using our own, and we've had success in the past. Bonnie, who's our auditor, she was our apprentice first. So it's we will always go through that process if we can.
For Damien, I'm very pleased to hear that we now got OneServe and trying to make full use. And I fully appreciate it's a live thing which will keep on being updated as we go along. And the one worry I have is the new regulatory regime that's going to come into housing. Obviously, that's going to put extra demands. And from what you've said, the digital solution will be the best way to manage, if you like. So, I mean, that will be a potential high risk to the organisation not to be able to report back. Do we have yet the details of when reporting has got to be put in place? And, is the OneServe going to be able to manage to satisfy all the requirements of the new regime?
The answer to that is no. There'll be a number of different improvements that we'll need to carry out to our existing software, and I think we're going to need to invest in other bits of software. So, and we're busy exploring those at the moment. So the new regulatory regime comes in from the 1st of April 24, and so we have the remainder of that time to pick up and look at our systems and our services. We're working on them at the moment. We've had a peer review in that respect as well, that I'm getting initial feedback next week. So we're looking at our housing services, we're looking at where we are at the moment and where the gap is, how we address that gap and how we move forward. But you're absolutely right, it is a significant risk to the authority. If we don't get it right, it becomes regulated. The regulator, I've been going to lots of webinars, I've been face to face. They're very clear in their message, and they're not, from everything they've said, they're not looking to come in and whack us with a big stick. They want to work with us, but ultimately it's about achieving those consumer standards. It's about making sure that our housing stock is sufficient, meets decent home standards, and that people, they have a right to live in a quality home. And that's what we're going to be achieving, and that's what we're going to look. OneServe forms part of that because it collects data about how we do our maintenance. It collects data with satisfaction, and we'll feed that into other software that we're looking at. And modern software is great because it's got these weird things called APIs that apparently seem to link to everything and allow them to share data in a much, much better way. So we'll be looking at stock condition surveys. We'll be looking at how we have that kind of software ourselves so that we can build upon data we collect through those, and we're then constantly building that data to look at where we need to improve, to look at archetypes. And it is about continual improvement. But there's also a flip side, which is about our tenants, about how we communicate with our tenants and how we encourage them to communicate with us, how we respond to their complaints, the speed at which we respond. So it's a very complex piece of work. And in housing, you can imagine, and I know we've got an election and we're coming into a new administration potentially, that'll form a significant part of the work that housing will be looking at. I've already asked Craig in his capacity as audit to have a look at how we're going to monitor our performances. And I'll just come back and say, if anybody's looking to apply for the job in Craig, do, because they're a fantastic team who support us. It's about a partnership internally, if you like, about we've addressed issues, how do we address them? So my teams enjoy working with Craig and his teams because it is exactly that. It's collaborative about how we move forward, how we address the issues. So if you've got any people out there, go for the job. But it is a big piece of work. There's no hiding from it. It is something that we need to do. And there'll be more coming in the future and regular reports and those sorts of things. But in answer to your question, it's not the only solution, OneServe. It's part of a multiple bigger solution.
wants to come in. On stock control, you're obviously aware that there's quite a lot of work being done on procurement, shared procurement, and I'd just like to understand how you work out the levels of stocks that you have, and what kind of risk are there in place to not to overstock on certain things that then you've obviously going to have a waste from. Just not let me understand on that.
So at the moment, that probably is, I'd be able to answer that question better when I come back in September, because once the software's in, it'll look at our usage. So at the moment, it's historical, really. It's about, well, we used 43 widgets that month. Maybe we need 50 or 60 now. And once the software's in place, that will give us much greater management information. And that's the bit that allows you to get that efficiency. And then you'll look at your existing stock and say, well, we've got 58 of the widget Bs. We never use them. So why have we got them? How do we get rid of them? We don't need to hold them. And that's an exercise, which is one of the reasons I'm saying it's never going to actually end. It's just constant improvement, constant fine tuning. And the joy of the one service, it gives you that management information. So how long is it taking operative B to do this job and operative C to do that job? They're the same job. Why is there a difference? Why have we? And we'll get into those conversations as the software comes into being and as it's used more frequently. We'll obviously build up that data, and from that data we'll be able to see, well, what do we do? How do we do it? We should also be able to see we're doing is right, whether what we're ordering is right, and that feeds back into conversations about, well, if we're using an awful lot of this, what's our contract to supply? Because then you can get into that level of detail as well. And then there's conversations with Karen and County about, well, are there economies of scale if we do this with other people? So it's still relatively early doors. But and funny enough, I was going to say, if I'm allowed to come back in September, I'm hoping that at that point, new committee or not, that I'll have more data for you and that we can continue to have that conversation about how we improve.
Zoe?
Thank you. I think first to Damien, yeah, as a former director of operations for an engineering company servicing schools up and down the UK, I feel your pain. Equally, I absolutely love a process and what software can do. I think ultimately it comes down to, I could talk for hours on, I could have loads of conversations with you, but actually it does come down to what those satisfaction levels are and how you collect data on what those satisfaction levels are. So one thing I just thought, well, I will mention that smiley face, straight face, sad face, something that's very easy at the end of a job for somebody to hop in front of someone and they hit it's a really good way, and they can expand on that should they wish, but a lot of it might be happy, a lot of it might be sad. If they're going to do a sad face, then putting on sort of some detail into that. But yeah, I do love a system. I do love a process. So, but equally, I feel your pain. It's really important to be coming back in September when you're looking at how those things are feeding in, and to collect that data to see how it's performing. And I'm so happy because I want to hear how you're getting on with it. So no, really thank you for that report. It was really interesting and really useful. To Craig, we are always talking about capacity issues, and I think it does come up every meeting. Do you have enough? We're very conscious, I think, as a committee that you have few numbers for lots of work. I'm pleased that you're going to have another one in the team. How will capacity be affected? Do you have a view on how capacity will be affected in terms of what might be coming with changes for some things being externally sourced, and how will that affect the capacity levels for your internal team if we're thinking about externally sourcing for doing some tasks?
So in terms of sort of shared services and things like that, so it just means there's a different way of looking at it for us. If we're bringing in services from elsewhere, it's contract management and things like that, which you sort of adapt to what you look at, and it might even reduce the time that we spend on things because there's other assurance that you can use if they're being. So if we brought in say for instance shared service with procurement, for instance, that's new. That's something that we're looking at this year in terms of how that arrangement works, and it's a different way of looking at it for us because there's certain standards and things that Essex would need to stick to as part of that program. We'll look at whether or not they're doing that, and are they sticking to that. So it adapts, and if we are really stretched, we can call on an external provider that provide internal audit services. I try not to because where we can, the local knowledge, I feel that it works better for me. But if we really do, it's there, we can use it, and we've used it in the past. We've used them, bring them in to do audits for us. And if it's something really new and none of us have any expertise in it in our team, then we will have to look and see whether or not there is anyone out there with that expertise that we could call on, which is there. So we've always tried to have that hybrid arrangement, knowing full well that we're a small team and that things change. We're so diverse in this organisation that there's always new things happening. It always changes. So yeah, I'm always aware that we've got those little bit extras if we really need them. If I feel that I can't give the overall assurance to the committee for the level of work that we've done throughout the year, then I will definitely inform you of that, and then we can look at how or what resource we can bring in to then try and get us there. But I haven't felt like we've been there yet so far.
So you have no more questions? Dallas, did you signify?
Just one more. Yeah, Craig, on page 15, where it says overdue number of ice severity issue outstanding, there's one less overdue, less than 3 months. What was that?
Yeah, so that's actually why Damien's here. So so that's to do with the deposit. Yeah. Yeah, so the next part of the report is my audit plan, and I'll just talk you through how we bring it together. So we look at the corporate plan, we look at corporate risk registers, speak to chief exec, directors, head of service, essentially ask them what keeps you up at night, what are you worried about, and that's then how we then start to build the plan, there's hundreds of public sector internal audit standards that we must abide by, and we include that in part of the assessment as well. Make sure that right levels of training is available, right in terms of corporately, are we meeting some of those criteria? So we'll look through all of that, and then come out with a plan at the end. There's a lot more emphasis on consultancy work, and I've always been sort of mentioned it here that if we can, we'll get in early before, if there's something new projects, new processes, new systems. I'd rather us be there advising than coming in and saying you did it wrong, you should have done this at an early stage. So where we can, we will do that. And I'm not trying to take it away from, we still need to audit, we still need to be independent. And if my time is spent on a lot of consultancy, then again, we've talked about, I can bring people in to do a review independently. So it would still be independent. I just wouldn't be involved if I've had quite a lot of influence on certain processes. So we have that arrangement, and we've got a few of them. There's as we all know, the budget pressures that we have in the next few years. So some of the audits on here are looking at different ways of doing things. It will be some maybe options appraisals and helping services with coming up with maybe some ideas of how they might need to change or where they can save money, or there'll be some elements of that work. There's also projects that are coming in that we mentioned that where I'll just be again advising. We'll spend some time on those, and then essentially the sort of core part of the report is our financial audits, which Richard's teams are probably sick of us that at a certain part of the year we're hounding them. How have you done this? Have you done this? And they form a core element of the overall opinion of our finances, because they're essentially the last controls, if you like, before things go wrong. And the financial part is the last element where you can stop things from going wrong. So we put a lot of emphasis on that as well when we're looking at our audit program. So that's essentially how we bring it together. And you've got the list of audits that we plan to do in the next over the next year. And I suppose at this point, if there's any areas that you want more information on and that audit plan, or if there's any questions, happy to take any at the moment.
Thank you, Craig. I'll take the two after questions. I'll take the two recommendations as one, if I may. But I'd like to just run by something that's caught my eye here while reading the agenda. On page 17, the consultative audits, and the council faces a difficult period within budget constraints. How do you think that will affect us in the long term for outstanding issues that need to be resolved and projects that are in the process of being built? Will that have an impact on those?
We've got an audit in the programme which we've called financial resilience, and that's looking at the resources of the council. With the budget pressures that we have, are we still able to provide core services? What savings are going to be offered up? Can we actually reach them? Can we meet them? There'll be questions that we'll be asking throughout the year, I guess, with every area, and that's what that element will be there for. In terms of whether or not we can deliver, I guess that's part of management. Will look at what resources they have available. Can they still deliver the program work? Can they meet the corporate plan? We'll be asking those questions, and management needs to, I suppose, answer them and tell us whether or not they can or can't do that. But it'll be down to them to decide what happens next. Do you change the way you do things? And if you do make that decision, then we'll support them and look at how they do that. So it'll be ever changing. It's a very decisions are made quickly at points like this. You one thing you might want to do, your plans never go to plan. So how can you change with that? And we'll just be there to ask those questions. Is that really going to work? Or have you got a resource to do that? Is the money available? Questions that we ask all the time, but we'll just be more emphasis on it, I guess, because we've got quite tight budgets to meet over the next few years, and it's important that those questions are asked, and that's what we'll be doing as part of our role.
I think future planning is very difficult at the moment with the instability throughout the whole of the country. Under your excellent directorship as a team, we look relatively safe at the moment, but some have fallen by the wayside, and well, goodness knows what's going to happen within that circle. So we thank you for the outstanding work that you do. So basically, if I've read what you've said correctly, is that ongoing projects already established and moving on, they will not be so much affected. It's the ones that are coming through the pipeline that will have to be looked on and judged on their merit. Have I got the right angle on that?
I suppose both of them will still be judged, but I guess it's not, the judgment doesn't come from audit. That will come from management in terms of and members to decide whether or not those projects are still going to continue. That's not up to us. It's we will adapt to whatever decisions are made, and then see whether or not we can deliver in that respect.
Richard, you wish to come in?
Only a small point, because I don't think Craig can answer that question, because I think what it's more about is Craig's, as he said, it's about has the council got the right financial framework in that? Are we working on the savings target? Are we working on financial resilience stuff? So the questions around can we continue with a project, that's within a much bigger financial sort of equation and question. Are they at risk? We don't know that yet, and we're looking going forward. But I think Craig's view is: are we asking ourselves those questions? Are we asking ourselves those right questions? And are we dealing with those things? So I think Craig is really kind of making sure we're covering those important financial sort of questions. So which will happen as we go through the year. So it's much more about is a framework of assurance there from Craig's words. Yeah.
So the question I asked basically is for another day with more information. So if I may move on.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to pick up the question you put forward, I think going forward, the budget constraints are what they are. You'd have to be living in cloud cuckoo land if you're not aware of what the position is. And the last cabinet we discussed we've always been quite clear into not dictating an agenda to the oncoming administration, but I think that's been dictated for us. The two bids that have been successful will very much guide the work of this council going forward for at least the next 10 years, let alone the next administration times. And the risks associated with that will only become aware once you get stuck into that, and the streamlining of project, that's very much something that I'd like to carry out. We've got a date in the diary, I think, next month to have a quite comprehensive review of what, because obviously you can't do everything. You can only do what you can. And although it's extremely good news that we received £27 million between Harwich and Clacton, it's like the original made the cabinet was having to wear a very heavy gold watch. Really, you complain about how much gold you're carrying, and this is very heavy. I don't think I can carry anymore. So that agenda will be dictated, and the risks will be identified. So that's again, that's for a different thing. But one question I have is there's quite a lot of to be confirmed in the audit plan progress report, which I think would be good to kind of fill in those slots. I totally understand. I think I like your approach, because by going to all the various departments and ask what keeps you up at night, and on those bases, that Damien probably has no sleep at all at night time. No, that's Richard, But I think it's a very good approach, but it'd be quite good to kind of fill in some of those to be confirmed gaps. Just going very quickly through them. There's one on the NNDR. There's an example I was having with Richard. Although he's not a risk to us as an authority, because although we have got an NDR liability, it's more of what our businesses out there. There's been a revaluation exercise that I wasn't aware of. That's trebled the rateable value of just about every business is in the district. That's gone below the radar of everyone. So it would pose a risk to us, because our financial strategy is very much centered on receipt of business rate, basically. So that could be something that we really need to delve down. And I was shocked when this business came to me and said, look, my Red Bull has gone up 3 times. Why is that? And many people are not aware of that, So that could be a risk to us, because we are planning that our financial health will be based on receipt of business rate. So that's one thing. But I'd just like to have your thoughts on, whether some of these tables could be, is it going to be a huge exercise to, because I mean, this is the day-to-day running of the authority, isn't it? It's not any, new projects or anything. It's just So just try to understand. I've got other questions. So if you take that one first.
Yeah. So that part of the report that you look at, that's our current progress report. So yeah, we do have some still be to confirmed, but we are really at the end of quite a lot of those. But I didn't want to give you sort of a what I think it's going to be at the moment, because it can change if it depending on the information you get in those conversations. But yeah, business rates is always part of our audit plans every year. Council tax, housing benefit, they're all big administrative burdens for us as a council, and we do get our receipts from that as well. So we try to make sure that all those processes that we have in place to where changes, like you just said, if there's changes to the business rates, the rateable values and everything, then we will look at that calculation as part of the audit at the beginning of the audit to make sure that our systems are doing that properly, and that all the business out there are getting the right rates. Well, I say all the bit, we don't look at all of them because there's thousands, but we take a sample and we'll look at, is that being done correctly? Are they getting the right? They might even get some reduced rates that they didn't know about, and we might see that in an audit. And sometimes we do actually say to the service, "Can you look at this one because we don't think it's right?" But we can only do that with samples. And if there is things like that do come out, then we will ask the service, "Can you just revisit that? Can you have a look at that because we don't think that element is right?" So that's always part of our sort of program of work. So yeah, every year we will look at that, and it's the same for all of our audits, is that we look at what the policies are, what the rates are, what the standards are that they should be meeting. That's the basis of our audit, and then we'll bring that through and start testing and checking. So yeah, that's really if that gives you the assurance you need for that. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Hello.
So on the actual audit plan itself, I said earlier about the consultancy work that we've got in there. So there's days in there for levelling up fund at the moment. We don't know what that's going to be, our involvement, but I've been part of a meeting already just to talk about sort of plans and what might happen, and that will continue. So we've got times in there, but we've got project management, contract management, they kind of go hand in hand. You can look at them together sometimes because they overlap. Health and safety is always in there. Again, every year it's one of those where we believe it's a risk. Historically, we've had issues, so we want to make sure we don't have them again. So we have it in there. We've got a good relationship with the team. So yeah, I don't want to go through all of them, but if there's any audits on there that you specifically want information on, or if there's any that you want any questions about, just yes.
Hello.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've got not real problems because it's quite a factual statement that it's not real anything that jumps out. Freeport East is one of those that, again, it's more or less outside our control, but we're about to sign the MOU on that, and hopefully that will come forward. And that, again, is a very long-term project. And IT and cyber security, I think we put that issue to bed, which, it's been bubbling away for quite a long time. It's just like, when the minutes, although I wasn't here at the last committee, one thing that is still bubbling away, that I'm not going to give you, individual examples because it would be wrong, but planning enforcement, there was a new policy being introduced. Now, I understand that's been introduced. They used to be on the audit plan before, and I think it would be very fitting that planning enforcement should go back on it, because what I'm picking up is that it's not, the policy has been put in place, it's not really delivering what it should do. So therefore, I think it would be quite good if we were to kind of revisit that and put it back on there until we get some assurances that what's been done, it's actually delivering on the policy, And I know Maurice is part of a member of the planning committee, so therefore I'm not really. But what I'm picking up is that we're not quite yet there to deliver. Like I said, I won't give you example individual ones, but I think it would be quite good. That's number one. Number two is obviously the depot operation is things ongoing. Don't know whether that should have a slot on there as well, because obviously there's quite a lot of stuff on there that'd be quite good, and that would keep minds focused, if that was part of that. And last one, it's Careline, obviously, that's got its own challenges and things. I don't know whether that should also be included in that. And I'll shut up, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Although a part of the planning committee, that is right, and in fact was there when this policy was brought before us, and we agreed it, and it was taken in then to the other committees for final approval. I now speak as, sorry, I do apologise. Can you hear me now? Are you okay now? Yeah, my head is done. I humbly apologise. Okay, so look, I speak now as a member of this committee and also as an active councillor in that. I agree entirely with what Carlo has said. What's happening is that the general public who have access to this are confused between what is written in the enforcement and how it's and how its role is rolled out. I'm sure we'll get there eventually and it'll all come smooth. But up to now, there are problems. No, give you a chance to respond to that.
So that's so in terms of planning enforcement, we have it on our table of outstanding conditions, which is where we've got long-term sort of issues, if you like, or recommendations. We move it to that part of, I suppose it's Karen's report, where we'll follow up and keep chasing that one. And with in terms of the depot operations, we automatically will do. We've got a follow-up process where we liaise with the department continually. You send out constant reminders. Where are you at? Where are you at with this? And they're probably sick of us. They probably get sick of us in the end. Yeah. So we have those processes, but I take what you're saying. It could be that whether or not you want a full audit again, or whether or not they remain part of our table of outstanding conditions, and the committee just continue to ask those questions. Yeah.
Zoe?
Thank you. Yeah, on planning enforcement, I would agree. I think as long as it remains on outstanding conditions, I think as councillors, we're all seeing those new processes sort of coming into view. So actually you're getting a report back that says this is what's going to happen and this is what time it's going to happen at, and so on and so forth. That goes out actually until you've had time to look at, okay, so is that actually what's happening? Are we going back? But it is such a big deal. The people, it's a big deal. The residents. So it's vital, absolutely vital, that we continue to have a very good view of what is happening, because it's taken a long time. I think it will take some time to embed, but we do need to make sure, I think, that from a reputational point of view, that that we are doing all we can. So yeah, on outstanding issues is absolutely fine. And yeah, and I agree. I think Careline, does that go on outstanding issues, or should that come in on here?
With Careline, so I was part initially with the implementation of the changes, and we kind of tried to support them in what they were doing. We haven't really. So what I've done in this plan, we've put it in as a follow-up. So it won't be as in-depth as what we've previously done, but we'll look at all of those areas where it needed improvement, and we'll go back and we'll look at that. Has that happened? Has all these things that you needed to do, you've said they've been in place now? Let's see if they really are, if it's working, and then we'll come back to the committee and say, if there's no issues, it will just be on our report as saying, yep, very good, no issues to report. So we've got it in as a follow-up in this year's plan. And yeah, so that's the process we've used with Careline, because historically we've never had any major issues with Careline. So because we had this external review and everything else, and there has been a lot of improvements, it's worth us just doing a follow-up, and if that's all fine, then it's not worth having it on the continuous program. So so we've allocated sort of 4 or 5 days in the plan just to go in, ask the questions that we've asked before, can you show us what you're doing differently? If it's all okay, then we'll let you know as a part of our normal progress reports.
I think it goes back to an earlier discussion we had actually, because what a really good topic for handover meeting, because we did have career track, we had care line, we got depot, we got planning enforcement. You've got to find a way to hand that on, either it's not stop start. So it actually that table of outstanding sort of issues is great for it to go on, because it's not going to come off until you've got assurance, or the new committee's got assurance. It's not going to go anywhere until then. But I think if we can just give a little bit of history to the new committee on all those subjects and say it's outstanding, we'll provide updates. Said Dame's going to come back to us anyway, isn't he, to this committee in the future. But we'll just know that smooth handover, they know what they're going to see over the next 6 to 12 months in terms of those updates. Yeah, it'd be great. And we had papers, didn't we? We had really good papers, didn't we? And we can provide a little bit of an update as well, can't we, on those? So yeah, I think it'd be really helpful actually. Yeah.
Chairman, I think it's worth spending a little bit of reflection actually, because having had 2 of our the leader himself went on a peer review last week in Hastings, and the chief exec was also in a peer review in Swales in Kent. And when we had a discussion yesterday about it, the relationship and the checks and balances in place here, are like the gold level. When you hear back from other people, you haven't got to look far. Attlesford, Thurrock, Northampton, they're not far away from us, are they? And if you see what's happening there compared to us, so we're in an excellent position here, really are, because there is these discussions. I'm very happy to, and when there is an issue, then it gets looked at, and it gets dealt. So, and it's like the update that Damien has just given us today. It was really informative, because you've taken the 5 areas, you've given an update on each one of those, and you've got a plan to go forward, But it would be wrong not to keep, a check on it, because obviously, and we've got the relationships here that we can do that, Other councils wouldn't, and some horror stories that have come back from elsewhere. So I just would like to say well done for, the way that in which, checks and balances are in place here. And I wonder if there is an age limit on the career track, because if I don't get back in May, I might just apply for the job,
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Overall, I feel very assured that the right questions are being asked. Yes, it's a snapshot and things come along, but I feel very assured that the framework is in place to be asking the right questions to take us forward. And yeah, thank you very much.
Recommendation, page 10.
Yes, by all means. 1 moment. You jumped in there. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the recommendation is on page 10, and we'll take the 2 together, both parts A and B. Can I have a proposer for that, please? And seconder. Keith, everything good? Okay, so that's carried. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. That's the whole issue that has been discussed. Yes. Yes. See, what I was actually going to say before we move on, I was going to put that in, as the fact is we don't only get reports from you guys, we get in-depth reports. We know exactly what's going on. And I think that it makes it so much easier for us to understand in the long term. Remember, we're only lay here. Thank you. So, and can we thank you very much for coming? Thank you. So moving on to
Being optimistic.
Right.
We'll see you.
So item 7 on the agenda is report from the Assistant Director. This is A2 of the table of outstanding issues. Page 31. And Karen, that's with yourself.
Thank you, Chair. This report is to present to committee the updated table of outstanding issues, focusing on general items raised by the committee and the annual governance statement. Outstanding actions include the statement of accounts for 2020-21, which we've already discussed through today, so I'm sure you don't want me to go through that again. RIPA remains unchanged, and then the Redmond review, the latest update, it says is attached Appendix C. Apologies, it's not, but you've got the handouts there. It's purely for information purposes. There's no action required. So again, my apologies, but please take away that information to catch up with yourselves. And then moving on to the table itself, the first item is training, which again, I think we addressed earlier in the meeting. So if you're happy for me to continue on from there. And planning enforcement as well, we've just discussed. Then on the annual governance statement, outstanding actions, a lot of them remain ongoing, but with progress. And a particular focus on the climate change action plan was that we had a previous agreement that the corporate director would come and provide us an update at an early 2023 meeting. Unfortunately, due to availability, that's not been possible, but that's now been confirmed for our September meeting. So we'll have a full update then. And then everything else within there is for information purposes. The new tranche of the service position statements will be going out to assistant directors and heads of service this week to cover Q3 and Q4 as part of the ongoing work for managing risks across the organisation. And when those come back, those themes will be collated and presented back to management team as they were last time. And I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, as is Richard.
Just a brief one on the climate change. I know there was a report that went to the Resources Service of the Scrutiny Committee of what the last plan delivered. And I just wondered if the Audit Committee received the same reports here as well or not, because obviously it was some areas where progress had been made, but some areas where progress had not been made, and very conscious that the new plan has been kind of been put to discuss as we speak, and that would be obviously picking up the point of the regulatory reporting now that will be left on housing, that would be the same on carbon emission and green performance. So just wonder if that report could be part of shared here as well, because I mean that gives a very good snapshot of what's been done and what's not been done, so and just really understand what the milestones have not been met, what risk does it pose, and because it's a very topical subject.
Yes, Councillor Guglielmi will be able to get that out to members if you feel that would be useful, and then the corporate director will obviously be able to go over that in further detail and then answer any questions you have arising from that in September.
Are there any further questions? Colin?
Happy to move.
Okay, to move. It was moved by Councillor Gugnami.
Thank you, Chair. This is to present the Audit Committee programme for the upcoming year to the committee for the proposed dates. Dates are yet to be finalised in, is it May, Keith, full council? The work programme hasn't changed drastically from the last few years and covers all of your regulatory requirements and also notes that the committee need to consider statement of accounts, corporate governance and risk management, work and performance of the internal audit function and external audit, and any other progress audit recommendations made by yourself. Again, happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Chairman. I think there's quite a lot going on, and although we approved the programme of meetings at full council the other night, I think it was for that, and the meetings are there set in stones, but there's just a huge amount of stuff going on, especially with the outstanding statements of accounts, whether some flexibility should be applied. I know that this committee is actually scheduled extra meetings as and when it's been needed, and I think we'll just bear that in mind that extra meeting might be needed between now and then to deal with the workload that you've got, So I think little and often works better than packing a huge agenda and, not doing it justice. So I'd just like to raise that really with Karen.
Thank you, Councillor. And the committee has demonstrated over the past that there is that flexibility and it's worked very well. So hopefully we'll be able to continue that.
Any other questions? Okay. Agenda item number 9 is exclusion of the press and public. Only I have to read it out. Is that correct? You wish me to read it out? Okay. The committee is asked to consider passing the following resolution under section 100A4, the Local Government Act 1972. The press and public be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of the agenda item 10 on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 7 of part 1 of the Schedule 12A as amended of the Act. In favour?
I'll move that.
Okay. So moved.